Welcome to the Gain Momentum podcast, focusing on timeless lessons from senior leaders in hospitality, travel, food service, and technology. Our co-host today is Zoe Kombusi, and our special guest today is Francesco Sforza. He is the guest experience and product development at Radisson Hotel Group. Francesco, how are you?
Hello, Adam. Hi, Zoe. Very nice to be here. All good. What about you?
Great to have you. And you're coming today from Madrid.
Indeed, yes.
Awesome. And Zoe's in Barcelona, so I'm talking to two people in Spain, and therefore we have to talk about what distinguishes Spanish and also Italian hospitality to touch on your career, earlier career, Francesco. So let's start off here with your current role, guest experience and product development. What does that mean in the context of hotels?
Yeah, sure. Sounds very fancy, yeah? So the when we say guest experience design, it's a lot of things. It's really hard to explain usually. In a nutshell, I would say it's the definition, the crafting of every touch point that a guest has with our brand, basically. This goes from the first digital interactions on our brand web, of course, during their stay, and during post-stay engagement activities as well. Of course, I mean, it's a very cross-functional role, I would say. We really collaborate with a lot of teams also internally in the company. But the final aim is indeed ensuring that our guest journey is as seamless as possible, and most important, aligned with our brand promise, which basically, bottom line, it translates into guest expectations. As you can imagine, what we always say, an experience defined in a meeting room. In my case, in Madrid, almost all the time it's perfect on the slides. Then when implementing the experience, it's when the real challenge comes into the scene. So as part of this guest experience design, it's crucial also the connection with the operations team to understand what actually can be done, what cannot be done, what are the systems that we can leverage actually to deliver these guest experiences. So the contact with the hotels is essential. In the end, we always focus, for companies always focus usually on guest experience, but we always ask to our team members to deliver great guest experiences. But if we don't give to the employees the right tools to deliver these great guest experiences, I think the overall system has kind of a bottleneck.
That's very interesting. Of course, this is the timeless lesson, which is you can put anything on a slideshow, but then it still comes down to the nitty gritty and the nuances of implementing. So how do you help to work with other departments that maybe are operations, food and beverage, wellness? How do you work with other departments to ensure that that's all translated into something that guests really value and enjoy?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, um like officially I work at Radisson headquarters, but we always refer to us as corporate support office as a rather than an headquarters, because our business is really hotels. So in the office we're just like a bunch of people meant to support the hotels. So it's really, I would say, a bottom up approach, because in the end our hotels know our guests better than anyone, I would say. So the first input is always the dialogue with the hotels. Then, of course, we are in charge of having, let's say, the more strategic vision of the experiences. So usually, in terms of process, we map these experiences. We have, let's say, our desired outcomes of these, and then we involve all the teams to give their inputs, their feedback, and let's say to usually to rescope a bit and set some boundaries to our creativity. So this is the process. Then of course, I mean the projects are very broad also in their nature. We can go from like pure like design of UX of online check-in system till the selection of the showers that our guests are gonna experience in our hotels. So according to the nature of the project, different internal stakeholders are involved every time in this definition.
Right. So just for clarity, it's not just digital experience that you deal with, but also a lot of FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment as well.
Yeah, well, it really depends. Then, of course, in that case, there are also some procurement teams involved. But I would say the real um, let's say advantage, not advan the thing that I like about Radisson is that the experience it's seen as an overall thing and it's not clustered in silos anymore between like digital and physical. We now it's very cool saying phygital, but it's actually the reality, you know. Maybe it sounds like a paradox, but like from most of our guests, the physical experience is actually the one they experience from their device. And the one that we consider as physical experience in hotel is actually the more abstract ones, you know. So there are no defined boundaries anymore between physical and digital, and that's why I think it's 100% needed to have just one experience.
Right. So you mentioned one experience, and we're talking now about Radisson Hotel Group. So let's take a step back and, you have two guests here, and you're trying to sell us on Radisson Hotel Group. What do you love about the brand, and what distinguishes it?
So in terms of company and then of course our brands as well, the real thing that I think it makes the difference in Radisson compared to other company is the behavior of our team members, both at corporate level and hotel level. You know, we have our Yes I Can philosophy, which is not just a motto, let's say, but really means that everyone is empowered to find new way to surprise our guests, you know. Of course, like being a digital physical global company, we need to have a huge set of standards, but at the same time, everyone feels empowered actually to, let's say, slightly deviate from these standards, and experiment things. So this attitude is shared really like at all level across the company, and I think our guests are actually perceiving this, and it's basically just an attitude which is shared by everyone. So we are a huge company, but in the end we are in a startup environment. So I would say we really co-create with our guests and our employee, and we always try, you know, to decline all of our value proposition and adapting as much as possible to our guest needs.
That whole word co-creating, and that really is something very powerful. And I know you probably pay a lot of attention to that. And specifically for Radisson, when we're talking about co-creating, you have nine subsidiary brands, I believe. So you have 9 points of co-creating with nine different guest types. How do you manage that? And can you touch on maybe one or two particular sub brands that to help it show that difference?
Yeah. Let's say we have a portfolio of now 10 brands, which I would say compared to other big hospitality players is not even a lot because you know you have like very complex brand architectures across the industry. This is actually a good point because you know we have in the end, the hospitality industry, and maybe it's not super clear from a guest perspective, let's say, as actually two final customers: the guest, which is staying in our hotels, and also the owners of the properties. So these brands are not facing only like the guest that physically is it's staying at the hotel, and like the purpose of each brand is like, let's say, fulfilling the needs of both the guest and the owner, of course. We have a very strong brand team, I have to say. They define the brand and their brand personas in a very clear way. They also develop some brand pillars, which and this I think it's important, are reviewed on a regular basis. So our brands are something evolving. It's not something fixed there across the time, you know. And that's also why I think we don't have so many brands, because we were actually able to evolve our brands during the time. This brand ideation is then, let's say, the starting point from my team, what we do, you know. So our mission, if you want to say it like that, is actually bringing these brands to life. How? Through brand standards, brand guidelines, and operating procedures, basically. And these are basically the things that are going to shape the guest experience. Of course, it's not easy from, let's say, Indian. It's a business, okay. So let's be honest, not gonna lie. So we have, on the one hand, the necessity of having like purpose brands that comes with or with a purpose, with really like emotional brands, and on the other end, we have business need of scalability. How we try to merge these, it's through our brand standard approach, I would say. So basically, within Radisson, we have what we call brilliant basics that are, let's say, the basics, the essential things of an hospitality experience, and kind of represents the like Radisson quality stamp. So no matter the brand, no matter the location, you are sure that all Radisson hotels have these brilliant basics. So these are global standards. There are cross brands, cross geography. On top of this, then each brand has its own, let's say, differentiating standards. Um, and then I don't know how familiar are you with Radisson brands, but we have Radisson Blue, which is usually like the top choice for business traveler, which you're sure that like anywhere in the world you go to a Radisson Blue, you have all the services you want for last minute issues. I mean, traditional guest expectations. In parallel, you have Radisson Red, which still delivers let's say, the main Radisson quality standards, but it's a brand which is more vibrant. So maybe a guest in a Radisson Red is not expecting to have, like the traditional room service, or with the metal cloche when you deliver the order, but maybe you're expecting something more fun, more casual, like a food box delivered to your room or something like this. Now, of course, some of the standards are more strict, some others, because in the end, we still need to keep, let's say, a brand guardianship. Let's put it like that. Some others are more flexible, because on the other hand, we really, as a global company, we really have the challenge of adapting these brands to different geographies, different guest needs, feeder markets, and very important, I discovered on my own experience, local legal regulations, which is especially for digital products, it's really hard, because usually you think, okay, it's a digital product, it's easy, it's worldwide online check-in solution, but then in each country you have different, like legal, especially data regulation. But in general, to conclude, our brand standards team really plays a key role in this, in the real way of writing down the standards. Let me give you a practical example, because I think it's a bit abstract. Like, we will never mandate to our hotels to have a chocolate muffin at breakfast. But the standard would rather say you need to have one sweet local pastry according to your market. So we ensure that, let's say, the main guest need, having, in this case, I don't know, a sweet breakfast, is fulfilled, but it wouldn't make sense to mandate a chocolate muffin, I don't know, in India, for instance. So our brand standards are also like meant in a flexible way. And it's a win-win situation, because like from a guest perspective, they experience the local, they still have their need fulfilled, and from an owner perspective, it's also a win-win, because like there are some geographies, I don't know, an avocado toast maybe in Copenhagen is part of guest expectations, but I don't know if in other regions is like that, and maybe like importing like avocados like in the Nordics, it wouldn't make sense from a business perspective. So that's why I think, like, even with less brands than many of the hospitality companies, our owners are still choosing us, because we're quite flexible.
So to pick out a thread, they're about localized frameworks. And that's a good segue to discuss Spanish hospitality. You mentioned just data compliance, and people may think with GDPR, it's just the EU is all the same. And really, what we know is that there's so many localized nuances, even from just Spain to France to Italy, etc. So I'm wondering if you could talk about perhaps one Radisson hotel in either Madrid or somewhere else in Spain that you love, and how you've really worked to create that localized experience, but within the framework of Radisson Hotel Group.
Let's say that in general, I mean, I moved to Spain since more or less 1 year. Okay. Um, I was actually in Belgium before. Of course, I think this is clear. Like this hospitality culture, it's part, I would say, of the Spanish heritage. If you look at like the Spanish also competitive environment, let's say, it's really plenty of hospitality and tourism businesses here in Spain, because it's something that I think it's really developed. And for instance, is a difference with Italy. Italy, of course, like tourism is, I think, is one of the first like driving sector of the economy. But it's plenty of hotels, of hospitality businesses, but usually like the companies behind are not really Italian. Like there's not this hospitality entrepreneurial mindset, I would say. Well, here in Spain, I think in terms of education, it's more evolved, and this is reflected also in the legislations. Now, it's sad to admit because I'm Italian, but the Italian legislation in terms of like data collection, hospitality sector, it's really not up to date. I would say that it's really hard to develop automation, digitalization in Italy. There are some like fiscal requirements. The online check. A real online check-in is not even like possible in Italy. While in Spain it's possible, for instance. Stated that, I would say that in general, in terms of like daily operations, there are no particular, let's say, differences in the Spanish hospitality environment, let's say. But of course, Spain as the Canary Islands, which I would really focus my answer on this. So the Canary Islands are actually, I think, the Spanish region where the hospitality is like not developed like more. Like we can open like an entire podcast episode on this. And actually, I mean, of course, it's a more like leisure driven hospitality. It's more resort oriented, entertainment oriented. But really, the competition there, it's crazy. So actually, we have a lot of best practices from our Spanish properties in the Canary Islands. I personally recently visited them. I was taking care at the time of implementation of e-concierge services, and I really found a great response from the hotel. Because sometimes also when it comes to implementing this digital tools, there's also some like educational, cultural barriers, just like openness to change and this kind of things. While in the Canary Islands, I found a really engaged team, willing to do more and change their way of working. So yes, so basically, I mean, we did a overall, let's say, resort project. There's like some people in the company, let's say, focusing on this more leisure oriented properties, and within this, we decided to offer our guests the possibility to manage their entire stay at their fingertips through the implementation of a web app, which again, from a guest experience perspective, amazing. But when it comes to the hotel level, it really need to change the entire way of working. Like we have this. I think in all hotels there's this role of the reception, which basically, yeah, we keep hiring like receptionists, but in the end, like it's a pure admin finance department. It's a bit like everything. So I think that the goal for us with this e-concierge implementation was really, of course, enhancing the guest experience, but also like redistributing the tasks, the hotel tasks between the various departments, and it was a really nice.
So, Francesco, thanks so far. I think it's really interesting how you talk about different kind of levels of digital knowledge, let's say, and digital legislation in various regions of the world. And I'm wondering if going back to ensuring that staff are at the center point of your digital implementations, whether you find any differences or any challenges, or how you approach implementing with different staff in different regions of the world.
So I would say, of course, there are some patterns in terms of like nationalities, and sometimes are not even patterns. I would say maybe stereotypes. Like it's a bad thing to say, but sometimes stereotypes are true. But it's also true that, fortunately, I would say, regardless of the region our properties are located, our staff is usually very multicultural. So it's very hard to find, I don't know, the Spanish hotel with like all Spanish employees, or the Danish hotel with Danish employees. Usually is a mix of cultures, with different backgrounds and way of communications, I would say. So it's really nice to, usually, I mean, when I visit the hotels, there's always one person within the operations team that like naturally becomes, let's say, my point of contact, because maybe like in that case communication, it's easier, or their background is more similar to mine, so the communication is faster. But then it's really nice to see how within an hotel team, which usually it's kind of a family environment, like each one is very aware of what are their strengths and their weaknesses. So they really like, when it comes to implementation projects, they really naturally assign themselves the task, or the, the things they have to do.
Yeah, staff buy-in's so crucial, and I think, you must really take them into consideration in the process of deciding what you're going to implement and how you're going to do it. So, yeah, thanks.
And for everything, sorry, to add this, the trainings are essential. And these, I think, especially now with all this digital products, digitalization of services and everything, because like we sometimes, okay, we have the job roles, the job positions in our minds are the ones of the past, like an housekeeper, a chef, a concierge. But an housekeeper that needs to use a complex digital system, for which like even I needed, I don't know, 2 weeks to study, is not doing, like, let's say, the traditional housekeeper role. Or a front office agent that needs to use like complex management systems, online systems, purchasing systems. It's not anymore a receptionist. So we really like should highlight the importance of the training for anything.
Well, it's very interesting because your role is guest experience and product development, but realistically, when you're looking at technologies, the end user, you have to also be staff experience focused. And I'm wondering about your role and what you look at as trends and developments and what you see to help the end user, the housekeeper, the front desk clerk, to make the technology more intuitive, to thereby free up their time or free up their energy to better help the guest and thereby improve the guest. Do you work in that capacity?
Well, let's say not directly, but of course, it's something I'm exposed to. Um, I would say in general, um, like, and this is a quote from my colleague who that you Zoe met. We always need to develop trainings for employees, but we never develop trainings for our guests. Like when you check in, not only at Radisson, but I don't know, you do an online check in for your flight tomorrow. You're not trained on how to do the online check in, because the UX design, it's very intuitive, and it has been developed with probably huge budget behind to make it as intuitive as possible. So from a guest perspective, you don't need the training. While I think that not maybe not anymore, but like in like recent years, let's put it like this, it was a bit like skipped this focus on the employee facing part, then now, so like the consequence of this is that then like huge training needs were required. I think that now we're shifting, let's say, behavior, and we are like giving the right importance also to the employee facing part of the digital tools.
So let's backtrack here because when we're talking about the guest experience and we're talking about essentially what now is the mobile experience. And I'm wondering if you could talk about specifically for the mobile experience, what you're seeing that is really revolutionary or is really helping push that forward to then have an impact on the overall guest experience, but also just helping to differentiate the brand.
You mean from a digital point of view?
Yeah.
Yes. So I actually was last week in Berlin, where we had our annual corporate summit, and like digital products, AI was really like a lot on the agenda. Of course, I mean, technology, yes, plays a key role both from a guest experience and operational perspective. I'm sure you know already that Radisson developed its own PMS system, which makes you understand immediately how importantly technology is seen within the company. I was actually very impressed when I first joined the company 2 years ago that they had developed their own PMS. Of course, this came with some challenges, especially for our IT teams, as basically back then we were an hotel company basically producing a software. So you can imagine it was not really at the time our core expertise. But today, thanks to this, we have really the chance of being able to personalize our guest experience in real time. Of course, I mean, thanks to the data we can have, but in general, let's say we can evolve our systems based on our needs without, let's say, having to wait for the market basically to develop things. But I would like to say that even if digitalization today is really on the spot everywhere, and for sure it's crucial, for us it's really essential to let always our guests choose. Because basically, in the end, like the way to say, like, the customer is always right. It's actually true. So we're always developing and implementing new products. We have like check-in kiosks, e-concierge apps, as I was mentioning before, mobile room keys. Like, we're always like super innovative and implementing these things, but we always let our guests choose how they want to access the services. We will never choose basically on behalf of the guest. Um, this is really a point, especially for a big company like us. We really have like different brands, different customers. We cannot impose, okay, from tomorrow this is the way to check in. From tomorrow this is the way to order a room service. So we are now focusing on having as many as use cases as possible, as many channels as possible to deliver the same service. It's like, like all roads lead to Rome, kind of. This is basically the approach we are taking.
All roads do lead to Rome, right? The Appian Way. So you mentioned something about room service, and that goes now into the on-property experience. And I'm wondering if you could talk to some of the technologies that are on premises to really enhance the on-site experience. What are you seeing there that is helping to create more meaningful guest experiences?
From a global perspective, I think that let's say the main innovation in terms of digital F&B are indeed this kind of e-concierge services, which is, I know it's a very like broad word, but basically very bottom line is basically, like when you're at your place at night and you want to order a pizza, you just open like Uber Eats. So basically this is your expectation right now. Like, from a guest experience perspective, you want to have everything at your fingertips. Content, it's crucial because you're gonna order the nice looking burger and not the shitty one, of course. And then, like, you can personalize, create offers, promotions, this kind of thing. So with these e-concierge services, we're trying to basically replicate these things that guests are exposed to on a daily basis and bringing it to the hotel. This is actually a broader discussion, but in general, I personally believe that, back in the days, when you would go to an hotel, you would have an enhanced experience compared to the bedroom you're used to, like to be at your in your flat or whatever. While now, I think it's really hard, not because like hotels are not good at doing what they need to do, but because like the quality of life, let's say, really, it's really way better. So basically, now it's not anymore a guest going in the hotel and finding the cool thing that they don't have at home, but the challenge is now is keeping the pace with the innovations and the products guests use at their own houses, and having it also in the hotel. Like at your place, I'm sure you have an Amazon Alexa device. You order your dinner on your mobile, then you go to to the hotel, and you don't have all these things, and you need to, order room service by calling reception and like scrolling a menu, paper-based menu. So, like there's kind of a mismatch in terms of behavior.
That's so interesting. I'd never thought of that point of view, and I think you're so right. So what is it then? So you're trying to keep ahead and keep at the same level as guest expectations in terms of the everyday technology that they use. And what about in room? Because you do digital and also physical, phygital, I think you called it. So what about in room? How do you combat that? Are there any other ways in terms of design that you deal with that?
So not specifically. I mean, there's a dedicated, in this case, F&B team. If you're referring to like a broader discussion, like in terms of hardwares that you have in room and not just like systems, um, there are several I mentioned before, like the Google Home, Alexa devices. We are exploring these. Mm, Potentially, you can have like iPads, robots, like these kind of things. But I would say that at this stage, it's really more a wow experience than actually an added value. Um, because everything to really be an added value, it should be like really well like inserted into like the overall operations of the. I would say that especially like room service, it's something that I don't know. It's not so popular anymore. Let's put it like this. Especially because the quality of the hotel like dining outlets, it's really like higher and higher. There are some very cool concepts and things. So of course, in some strategic locations, some sort of hotels, room service is still essential, I would say. Um, and of course, it's a revenue flow, but in general, there are, let's say, higher priorities in terms of guest needs than the room service, I would say.
You mentioned something, an interesting term that I keep reverting back to, which is the wow experience. And I'm not the one to coin this. Maybe you were, but I'm wondering, how do you measure that? How do you measure what's going to make a difference and really get guests motivated to keep coming back, to develop that NPS, and then to spend more on site, whether that's F&B or in other outlets?
Yeah. So my answer to this is going to be pretty simple. It's all a matter of expectations in the end. So like now you have like short rentals, Airbnbs, like a lot of services. When you go to an Airbnb, your expectations are usually like a bit lower than during an hotel stay. So if I rent an apartment, even if they put me there like a toothbrush, for me it's a wow experience because I'm not expecting that. Well, in the hotel, it's a bit more complex because there are a lot of experiences, um, standards that say that are in guest minds from an old school hospitality, which are actually, like are part of the expectation. So you notice if that thing is missing, but you're not actually having any enhancement in terms of experience by the presence of that item. For example, like how many times do you really use a shower cup in a hotel? I think very, very few times. But if you enter an hotel room and there's no shower cup, you notice that. You know, so it's a matter of expectations. Of course, each brand comes with some expectations, and then we really should be. Our challenge is again introducing these wow things that are things that are not part of the expectations. Of course, we have a team which is completely dedicated into like guest analytics, guest intelligence, online reputation management. Then Zoe, if I'm not wrong, you have also experience in the past in this field, and it's really important for us. So my team's role, guest experience development, is really like not a standalone team, but it's a cycle. It's a continuous assessment with the guest intelligence team.
Yeah, absolutely. The best place to get the insights and the real insights into what your guests are thinking is guest reviews, of course, because they're unfiltered. So yeah. Agree.
Indeed. And then operationally speaking, right now I think it's impossible. But our globally in the hospitality industry, and I'm not referring to Radisson specifically, like revenue management is now very strong, and the price is dynamic. Okay, and it's very well done, and it's working perfectly. So there's dynamic pricing, but then it's impossible to deliver dynamic standards. You know what I mean. So the same hotel room that maybe like on Tuesday, it's I don't know, the rate for that hotel room is 100 euros. Then on Saturday maybe it's 300 euros. So there, we're not able yet to have dynamic standards, but maybe some wow touches in that case would help, because the expectations are also set by the price rate. Yeah.
Definitely. I think guest experience is part of revenue management, you know? What they get at your hotel is totally part of, I mean, it's the biggest part of the value that they get oftentimes. So maybe you could map them together.
Yeah, 100%. And indeed, I was saying before, like our brand standards are only setting, the minimum. So basically, what kind of justifies the value for money, but then like each hotel needs to like eventually, according to their guests and their competitive environment, like go the extra mile and deliver on top on that.
It's very interesting that you mentioned that about how you have dynamic pricing and then somebody's expectations for that weekend where there's some compression event and they're paying €300 more than midweek. And now you almost need to have dynamic standards to live up to that increased expectation that happens with that yield management. And I'm wondering, do you this is very complicated to operationalize, but could you give us one example of how you've helped design one of these wow moments?
I mean, I think you noticed like we recently launched our revitalized rooms. That one. I think it's really like a wow thing, because it's really I would say a pioneering initiative so far, and for sure it's not yet part of the guest expectations. So that one. So basically, bottom line, what we did is we partnered with Bio, which is basically like they have a very like scientific background. They produce these plasma powered devices that really like help to rest better, get more energies, also have this light therapy treatment to stimulate skin collagen. They're growing a lot right now. Um, Initially, their focus was more, let's say, in terms of like sport, healthcare. We now is to hospitality. It's something like super super recent. We just did it, so we are still in the learning curve, let's say. But that one is a wow moment, because it's not indeed a part of the yet part of the guest expectations, and guests are actually willing to pay a premium price for that. So that one, I think it's a great example.
So to finish off here, Francesco, I'm wondering if we could touch on a passion of mine personally that ties into guest experience, which is wellness and sleep programs. And I'm wondering what you're seeing in that area and what you think applies best at scale to the guest experience.
Yes. So I would say that well-being is, as a concept and general market, let's say, is now interacting with the hospitality and in general the luxury industry, just like fashion some years ago. I don't know if you agree on this. On this statement, and I would say in both ways, meaning that if today you go to a luxury retail store or to a gym, you almost have an hotel experience, including F&B, amenities, and hotel services. Okay. At the same time, I would say that like in our age, sleep. I was seeing like an article the other day, and they were defining, sleep is the new luxury, and it's true, meaning that like the pace of our lives is nowadays like super fast, and it's now like way cooler having like the luxury to stay in bed than partying until late night. Um, so it's really important. But just like as I said, for the technology and digitalization, I would say that the key at this stage, at least, is always letting the guest choose and not assuming that every guest is interested in exercising or doing mindfulness exercise while traveling. Um, when it comes to Radisson, since many years now, our hotels are offering running routes from the hotel in a digital format, also like through some kind of like touristic itineraries while running. Our guests can download them in their mobile devices and go running. We launch as well as what we call RadFit, which is basically an in-room fitness kit. And then on top of this, we launched this bio revitalized room. So we are for sure exploring way more well-being sleep initiatives. Let's put it like this. But I don't think we can, immediately like convert everything into a well-being experience, because actually like the driver, let's say the travel decision is not only well-being. Then well-being is appreciated while traveling, 100%. But it's not actually the main reason for traveling.
Right. I guess the term we have is wellness secondary travel, where they want to stay healthy, but they're traveling for some other purpose. And it's up to people like you to design it, but keep it flexible for everyone.
Indeed. Flexibility is key. And also, I mean, then it really depends on the geographies, this particular topic. But I would say that F&B, it's also very much involved in this. Because, especially coming back to the room service discussion we were having before, most of the time, you arrive night in a hotel, you want to order room service, and you have like cheeseburger, pizza, hot dog, like these kind of things. And also like a healthy F&B offering is really crucial.
Awesome. Francesco, it's been a fantastic conversation, giving us a lot to think about in terms of experiential design and how important it is to stay flexible while also creating those wow moments. Thank you so much, Francesco. Thank you, Zoe.
Thanks to you for having me.
Thank you, everyone. Very insightful.
Thanks for listening to the Gain Momentum podcast. To stay up to date, make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Gain Advisors, head to gainadvisors.com.